Alright gang, welcome back to the channel. We have some absolutely huge news today, and it's not going to feel like big news when you see exactly what it is, but I assure you this is big news in the world of Pokemon and huge context for the future of Pokemon Gen 10 and beyond. So a few weeks ago, this trailer dropped for a game called Aniimo, which is coming out on Xbox, PC, and iOS and Android as well, which is very important, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later. But the closed beta has now dropped, and we've had some YouTubers and some content creators upload just completely unedited videos of the gameplay, and it's crazy the amount of overlap that some of the features that are in this Aniimo game with some of the ideas that we've been talking about just in our last few videos. Things like the battle bond and synchro machine stuff, the development of that, voice acting, visuals, textures, colors, the way the game looks. There's so much to get into here, so let's just play and zone into some of these clips. Now as the game opens, you see this beautiful UI combined with this really colorful world. So it introduces you to this instantly atmospheric world, right, with these creatures running around and this kind of futuristic UI that's really light, really clean, and super enticing, right? We meet the protagonists. You have a male and a female protagonist that you can take controller of. Either the way he's dressed, right? I know this kind of looks a little bit like the kind of stuff that comes up if I'm trying to make a thumbnail within like AI tools, but it really does look beautiful, and I think it is the future, to be honest, this kind of style. You're introduced to a few of these characters and some of the quote-unquote Pokemon, and crucially, we see voice acting here.
I mean, it must be so cool being a real Pathfinder. Oh, wow. Shh.
Sleeping Enderpup detected. Capture probability 100%.
Keep it down, Beanie.
And this is a cinematic, so you're obviously not playing during this moment, but there is a kind of intro sequence with voice acting, which gives instantly far more character and far more charisma to these playable characters that we've seen in any Pokemon game ever. Outside of the anime and stuff like that, they don't have voices in Pokemon. So you have this intro sequence where you meet your friend, there's this little clash of Pokemon, and I'm just going to call them Pokemon for the sake of this video, by the way. Obviously, I think they're called Aniimos, literally. But anyway, I'm going to call them Pokemon for the sake of this video. You guys know what I'm talking about. And then we see this introduction to the Pokeball, how these Pokemon are caught and tamed by the characters. And then just these shots of walking through the world. Again, the textures, the colors. It's a place you instantly want to explore. You instantly think, wow, imagine this in the Pokemon world. Compare this to Scarlet and Violet. Compare this to the textures we get in that game, even on the Switch 2 version. Now this is on PC with I think an RTX 5 series, which is the latest series of graphics processors, so this is obviously going to look better than what the Switch 2 can produce, but the Switch 2 can get pretty close to this. Let's make no mistake about it. The Switch 2 is pretty powerful. So this first little fiery Fennekin / Growlithe creature is called Ember Pup. What it does here is it uses its overworld ability to burn down these vines or branches and clear a path for the player to get through. This is exactly what we were talking about in the video that we did yesterday, or sorry, 2 days ago now. It's essentially like using cut back in the day, right? But this is a modern way of doing it, and only this particular fire Pokemon can use this ability in the overworld to enable you to get through a blocked area of the map. And again, the way these kind of willow trees with all the colors hang down and the shadows and the sunlight beaming through, it's just so good. In terms of the UI, the team appears kind of Legends Arceus style on the right hand side with levels. We see some gameplay, there's some wild Pokemon, there's a Skippy here, there's this, again, beautiful scenery. I think the idea of this game is that it takes place on a planet, but let's skip forward a little bit because we get to this point where a boss battle takes place. So shortly before this, you see these two, again, really well designed Pokemon / Aniimos that are in trouble. They're being taken by this semi-conscious tree of some sort. They're wrapped in vines and you have to rescue them by catching them. You're given a choice, so this is the equivalent to choosing your starter, I suppose. And once you've made your choice, the other one gets rescued by your friend character. So they both survive, don't worry. You then get taken down to this other part of the map and you see some exploring here, which looks amazing. There's these kind of futuristic, I guess, equivalent to Zelda chests where you can find items, again, quite similar to Legends Arceus. Again, beautiful to look at, even in these underdepths where it's really dark with all this kind of neon, thinking of like Moralol here, or this kind of neon lighting and atmosphere. You start to form a bond with your partner Pokemon, and then you have this situation where there's a boss battle. And the boss battle is with this quite tough looking enemy with a kind of plant vibe going on. It looks like a Digimon or something. It's called Omega Tuckin. So again, you have this very similar vibe to Alpha Pokemon and the boss battles in Legends Arceus, but this takes it so much further. And what happens is you do a decent bit of damage to this thing, but at a certain point, you need to really take it over the edge and defeat this aggressive enemy, right? And the way you do this is by doing something called twining, i.e. intertwining, but the mechanic's called twining. And what you have to do is you have to combine with your Pokemon / Aniimo, and you have to control it in the boss fight using the game's combat system. So you're fighting it as the human, your Pokemon's independently fighting the boss, and then at a certain point you have to twine. This is exactly what we've been talking about with the Battle Bond, with the Synchro machine, the Synchro Shift idea that we said in the other in the last video that we posted, and it's very, very cool. It's kind of like what we see in Legends ZA, but in my opinion, this both looks and feels way more satisfying than what we've seen in Legends ZA. And again, I want to give ZA its fair dues. We haven't seen much of the Switch 2 version of it yet. We haven't seen too much of the battling mechanics. But for me, this just looks way more engaging visually. Again, satisfying in terms of the way you're doing damage to this thing. Then weirdly, what happens is it gets overwhelmed. So the Pokemon that you twine with gets overwhelmed by twining, and then it kind of like attacks you. I don't really get that bit. Apparently a doctor shows up, and then you are back at this kind of academy. They've done this kind of like the UVA or Naranja Academy. You then meet these characters. Some of them are in charge of kind of like researching these Animos, which again are on another planet that's been discovered. And some of them are in charge of other mechanics like battling. So instantly, within like 15 minutes, you've gone through this, I suppose, tutorial, but it is so far away from the 2 hours that you have to sit through in the last few Pokemon generations. It's unbelievable. And you already have all of the same information. You're immersed in the world. You've been to 2 different planets. You've met all of these characters. And can we talk about the character designs, right? So I'm a male. I would pick the male character just naturally if playing this for the first time. Both the male and female characters look so good. This is what I imagine would have happened if the Pokemon Colosseum and Battle Revolution series had kept going. Honestly, we need to get James Turner back. I really hope that James Turner has been working on the Gen 10 art. I hope he's been that whole art director for Gen 10, basically. That guy's so talented. I'm so sad that he left for Scarlet and Violet, and I'm not surprised Scarlet and Violet looked like that art-wise when James Turner left after Sword and Shield. Or Gen 8, I think he worked on Legends Arceus as well. I think he did design a couple of Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet, but he was very hands-off doing his own thing with his own development company. So you have this kind of Aether Foundation looking place. You can clearly see all of the inspiration from the last few Pokemon games here. The Aether Foundation's very much there. Legends Arceus is very much there for the kind of UI and how the game functions with the boss fights. But it just does it so much better. And again, the characters, man, I just like looking at the way this guy is dressed, the way he walks around. He looks like the kind of player that no matter if I was a kid back in 20 years ago, right, when I would have been, if I would have been playing this when I was 10 years old, or now, if I'm playing it as an adult, I would love to play as this character. He just looks so cool. He's dripped out. He's got his backpack. He's got all of the kind of gamey stylistic attire, I suppose, going on, and just way cooler than the last few protagonists that have been offered up to us, in my opinion. And that's the point I'm trying to make. Like, no matter if I'm a kid or if I'm an adult, I want to play as this character. I feel cool playing as this kind of design of character. Let me know what you think about that, because I know that can be a kind of subjective thing, but for me, it's no doubt that kind of genius sonority style of character and art direction is just the best, in my opinion. Now, the battle system is really cool. I think it would have to be a little bit different in Pokemon, because you'd still want your Pokemon to be using moves, you know, the moves that are called, like, let's say Fury Swipes and Tackle and whatever else, right? You want them to be actual moves rather than just bashing A to punch and kick. But I think they could do that. They could make a sort of new category where they kind of put those less powerful moves as your kind of light moves, like Fury Swipes, Tackle, Pound, all those kind of moves. And there's obviously like light elemental moves with the different Pokemon types, like Ember and Water Gun and Bubble Beam and all that kind of stuff. And then the heavy moves could be like your finishers, Hyper Beam and Solar Beam and all of these kinds of things, you know, close combat, whatever it may be. So they could definitely do something similar. I just love the way this looks, and the way this functions looks to feel so satisfying. Obviously, I'm not sitting here playing it, but I'm imagining playing it, and I'm sure the person who is playing this feels like they are just getting rewarded for their input into the controller. What they're seeing on the screen is rewarding, you know what I mean? Now, we've spoken about quite a lot here. The last thing I wanted to talk about was the voice acting. Again, touch on that. The way this game works is that it's got voice acting during the cinematics, and then during the actual overworld gameplay, you have just text boxes appear. I think Pokemon could do something like this. Personally, I'd like to have the option to have dialogue in the overworld as well. Like when I'm playing games like Spider-Man on the PS5, basically most AAA games that are an RPG or a adventure story, I like to have the option to hear my character have a personality, charisma, emotional ranges, you know what I mean? Like I want to hear him be affected by the situation that he's in when I'm controlling him. That being said, I think this works well, and I would like this to be an option, but it's so, you can tell it would be pretty easy if they wanted to just do this with voice acting as well. And so why can't Pokemon do it, man? You know what I mean? So again, you have this kind of research thing, which is very similar to what you did with Professor, I think it's Laventon, isn't it, in Legends Arceus, where you have to catch more and engage with Pokemon in different ways to get some data for him in order to form this kind of like Pokedex. You then go and do these different missions, but look at this, right? There's this moment where the guy walks into the water, and because of the way, I guess Aniimo is free of the restrictions of the backlog of Pokemon lore and Pokemon games that have established how Pokemon work, right? So they're not this kind of digitized thing. They are actual real world creatures within the Pokemon lore. In this particular game, they've made it so that if you walk into the water, you can instantly morph into a Aniimo to cross water, again, to burn down the vines like we saw. I think Pokemon could find a way to do this. I'm sure they could. So back in the day when you were playing handheld Pokemon, you would go up to the water, for example, you'd press A, it would say, would you like to surf? You press yes. It's pretty quick. These days, if you really do have this dynamic thing where different unique Pokemon can have different abilities in the overworld in different ways, it would be annoying if that was restricted to your party of 6, right? So I've got a party of 6 and I don't have a water Pokemon, therefore I walk up to the water and I'm just stuck and I have to go into the menu. That's all a little bit disjointed. So it'd be nice if you can literally just walk up to the water, and as long as you've caught a water Pokemon, whether it's in your PC or whatever, you can just instantly, as soon as you touch the water, jump on your Blastoise, and then if you want to change the Pokemon whilst you're on the water, then yes, you can go into your box, you can change the water Pokemon that you're kind of using at that time. Maybe you need one that can dive, or you need one that can fly as well, or whatever it may be. You can change that manually, but at least give us that seamless transition where you don't really have to faff about, keep going to the menu. As long as you've got that Pokemon somewhere, you can summon it anywhere and clear whatever obstacle it is, right? And that's what this game does. Pokemon can figure this out. I'm sure they could. We've already seen how quick and seamless it is in Let's Go mode. You know, you command your Pokemon to attack something, then if you want to return it to its ball, you just tap a button, it gets back in the ball. So I'm just slowly, now I've seen this beta gameplay, I'm coming to the realization that this game, Aniimo, is quite literally the game that we wanted. By the way, if you go and check out the actual 52-minute clip from this Enfant Terrible channel, it's in the description, and you will hear the music and the soundtrack, which I've probably not put in the video, but you can hear it's a really beautiful soundtrack. It's so immersive. It adds to that atmosphere, and it's really, really relaxing, and it makes you feel something. So I think that this Aniimo game is going to be huge, and whatever Pokemon are cooking up with Gen 10, it's going to have to compare to this. It really is. So my final thought that I want to leave you with here, right, is I wonder whether the developers of Aniimo, which I think is called Paw Print Studios, which appears to be a new company, a new developer. We don't know the intricate ins and outs of whether the developers that work for Paw Print Studios have experience working on other games. You would imagine so when they're producing something of this level, but it's this new studio, apparently based in China, or at least its headquarters are in China, and I just can't get over how accurate this is in like evolving what Pokemon have built. So I'm just wondering, I wonder if some of the people that work at Paw Print Studios either have some sort of inside info. It's probably unlikely, right? I imagine what they've done is they've probably just looked at the last few Pokemon games. They've seen the direction Pokemon are trying to go, and they're saying, hey, we're gonna do this, and it's actually gonna be far, far better than what you're putting out, Game Freak. So I just wonder whether they have an actual into what Game Freak are going to be producing for Gen 10. When Gen 10 lands, if something like this is in it, does that suggest that maybe the developers of Aniimo knew that this was the kind of direction they were going? Or are they just guessing based on things like the Synchro Machine? Obviously, you can see a lot of Legends Arceus inspiration here, and surely Legends EA as well. So that's the thing that's really interesting to me, because imagine if Pokemon is sitting on a version of Gen 10 right now, they're going to share it probably in a few months' time, probably next February. And so it'll have to be pretty far in the development process right now as we speak. Imagine if they were just sitting on it, they were so happy with it, and then this comes out and they go, oh, oh, Aniimo is just doing what we're trying, but so much better. So very interested to see now, even more so, what Gen 10 is going to cook up. Anyway, guys, I know this has been a bit of a long one, but I thought this deep dive into the Aniimo beta was a very worthwhile thing to share and talk about. And it's incredible to me, I can't stress this enough, how similar this is to some of the things that I've been predicting that we're going to see in Gen 10, potentially Legends EA as well, with the synchro stuff, the fact that you can kind of interchange between human and Pokemon in this, and some of the overworld obstacle clearing, the UI looking so good. I just think this game looks fantastic. This is coming out, oh, by the way, yeah, sorry, finally, this is coming out for smartphones, iOS and Android as well. And Pokemon's kind of been going in that direction. You know, you've had Pokemon Unite, Pokemon TCG Pocket, Pokemon Go, and even like Pokemon Home. Lots of them are for Nintendo Switch often, but also they want to enable you to be able to play these games if you have a smartphone, which is pretty much most of the world right now. So basically, I just wonder, do you think that Gen 10 might come out on Switch 2, maybe Switch as well, and Android and iOS? It's a crazy thought, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility. Anyway, guys, I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching this. Leave all your thoughts down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Till next time, love you, gang.